many people know, is a very hot topic in the industry right now. So I thought by way of introduction, why don't we briefly go through our panel, if everybody could please introduce yourself and tell us about where you're from, and briefly mention sort of what your company has to do with DRM, and what, very briefly, I think the most important question as you answer that is, from your perspective, what is DRM? What, is it just a way to stop piracy? Is it rules, or how do you define it from the perspective of your company? Let's start with Ron and work our way down.
Should we maybe just do introductions first and then?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Say who you are, please.
All right. Yeah, I'm Ron Wheeler. I'm the head of the Content Protection Department in the Fox Group Legal Department. Fox Entertainment Group is, of course, one of the major media companies, subsidiary of News Corp, major producer of movies and TV shows and distributor, including online, actually. So MySpace is going to take over the newspaper business. I just learned that a few minutes ago. That's nice to know. Anyway, just really quickly, DRM obviously is a cornerstone of our video distribution strategy, and I guess we'll discuss more of it in detail as the panel goes on.
Thanks. I'm Bruce Poole. I'm a Global Business Development Manager for our Digital Media Initiatives Group. EMC is involved in managing, sharing, protecting typically corporate and business information that's evolving into the consumer side as well. So we certainly believe the concept that it's very important in how you share, how you manage, and how you protect information as it moves through its complete life cycle.
I'm Shawn Ambwani. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Intertrust. Intertrust is a small company in Northern California that deals with intellectual property regarding digital rights management, and also is heavily involved in two standards called Coral and Marlin related to interoperability of DRM.
I'm Jeff Segal. I'm the CTO for Cinea. Cinea is a wholly owned subsidiary of Dolby Laboratories, and we focus on anti-piracy products and services with a focus in forensic watermarking, which is a way of extending DRM through playback of content and through redistribution.
I'm Shawn Downey. I'm with VeriSign. I work on the joint venture between News Corp and VeriSign, so very interesting.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And one of the interesting things we do, a lot of you probably know us as a security company, and obviously that is a major point of what we do, but we also worked on what we consider to be the 5 other largest platforms outside of iTunes for content on demand. We actually worked with B-Sky-B, the BBC, Channel 4, AOL, and Open Media, so we're very, very much involved in soup to nuts what's going on around DRM.
Hi, my name is Richard French. I'm with Avvenu. We provide a service which enables you to remotely listen and iTunes music stream to you, and then to share it with your friends. As a result of that, we do it without, we don't unwrap DRM. We only do it with RIP music, and DRM has become a large issue in the fact that we cannot license it from Apple. We're also moving towards providing the same service with other music services and having the same difficulty in trying to license technology. So from a service perspective, DRM is great for some people, but it's not for smaller companies that want to work with existing solutions.
So let's talk about what DRM means for companies and consumers in the market. I think most people assume when they buy a DVD or download a song that they own it, but then when they start trying to do different things with it, they find out that they don't. So are they wrong that they own something when they buy it? Own a piece of content in some way when they buy it? And if they're wrong, then because are they aware of that, or are there ways DRM makes them aware of it, or why does this seem to cause a lot of problems for people when they move around, when they move their iTunes library or try to play their DVD on a certain computer or something? Anybody?
I mean, that question kind of hit me when you sent it to us. Does it really matter? Because they think they do. Mm-hmm. And so, we can argue this, but it's a consumer's perspective, right? And I call it the wiggle effect. If mom downloads the Wiggles onto her PC, she's going to want to bring them, into the van. And can we provide something that's a secure environment to allow her to move it around without making endless copies? That's really the question. Because I don't think she's going to think, and I don't know if anybody in the room can, say, oh, we could educate them that they only own it on the PC. I just don't know if that's a real answer. I mean, to say that I think we would own the actual copyrighted material, right. But in their mind, they think they do. So I think we have to come up with solutions around it versus arguing whether or not they own it.
Well, I also think that they have, if you purchase something physical, even though you may not own the copyrighted content on it, people do believe that they own that physical CD or whatever it was.
They do own that.
They actually do.
That's absolutely ownership.
Yeah.
But when you click on an end user license agreement, it actually says what rights you get from the downloaded content. It's clearly different. Now, I agree completely that it matters whether people read the EULA and understand it. That is highly irrelevant. And whether they don't like what they read in the EULA, etc. That's all very relevant to a business proposition. But there's no comparison between what I get when I download something after I click I agree on my EULA and going to Target or Best Buy and bringing home a DVD, which is just something I hold in my hand. That's clearly a different proposition. I don't think people are too stupid to understand the difference either.
I'd like to throw something out in response to Shawn, where Shawn has been mentioned that we need to come up with a protection mechanism so they don't have unlimited copies and can't redistribute. And I think that when a person purchases their content, they want to be able to use it where they want, and as long as it's in their network. And an alternative to provide a hard protection is something like forensic watermarking, which allows you to embed a message into the content such that you can trace the ownership of that content back to an individual, such that if they misuse that content, where they redistribute it to the mass market, that you can then use that information to trace it back to the original source. But it gives them the flexibility because you don't have to worry about interoperability of DRM systems within the home to play it on their different devices. So it may be an alternative to the hard as a soft mechanism once it's in the home. You still need to protect the content in the transport to the home, but once it's there, you may have some other alternatives.
Well, maybe let's talk about the options in the home. Right now we know there's kind of what some people call silos, right? There's the Apple silo from iTunes to iPod and now Apple TV, and there's Microsoft with the Windows Media devices, and they don't work together.
Zune, you mean?
Well, and there's Zune.
Yeah.
There's Zune, but there's also and there's media licenses, and Sony tries to have a silo unsuccessfully. Is there a trade-off between competition in the market, which everybody wants, and compatibility for consumers, which everybody also wants? Can you have two at once, or do you have to choose one or the other?
If I can just jump in, the silos, one of the things that's been lost in the whole debate about DRM is the silos were entirely 100% without exception the choice of Apple and then Microsoft Zune to do that approach. The pre-existing state of affairs was something called Plays for Sure from Microsoft, which people don't think Microsoft is an evil monopolist, but the DRM is an open license SDK. Anybody can license Plays for Sure DRM. It's still out there, by the way. It's not very popular, but the point, there is nothing that a studio like the one I work for, there's nothing in it for us to have a proprietary DRM that only works on one set of devices. It's actually quite counterintuitive. The only thing that might be in for us, if Mr. Jobs were to write us a humongous check for giving content only to his silo, that maybe would be interesting. Unfortunately, he hasn't done that to date. The actual interest of the studios is, of course, in having the maximum flexibility and market opportunity for our product, and therefore it's actually something that we were relatively dismayed to learn about.
So, there are standards that exist in this world for this, and for content, OMA, for example, is used extensively in 1.0 at least on a large number of handsets all over the world. In fact, the vast majority, I would say at this point. And 2.0 has much more functionality, and that's coming out slowly but surely. And then there's other standards like Marlin, which is more about a home environment and interoperability of DRM in the home environment by a lot of consumer electronics companies feel kind of sidelined at this point. And then you look at Coral, which is about how to allow different silos to talk to each other, essentially. But I mean, arguably, you know, you look at iPod and everyone talks about the iPod. 100 million units total, complete, like through their entire lifespan. Mobile phones last year 1 billion. Last year, it's like not even a close comparison. So, I mean, I think standards are naturally going to evolve in this area.
And can there be an open standard that would work as seamlessly for the consumer as iTunes to the iPod, which is clearly, I mean, certainly the Microsoft Windows Media Place for sure did not, and that's why it didn't do very well, I think.
Well, one of the things we're seeing as we kind of go around the globe is exactly what you're saying, which is, iPod ends up being kind of a high-end, if you want to call it, access, whereas the mobile device is more of everybody has it. But one of the interesting challenges is every day four more devices are added. So if you're trying to, let's say, in the case of Fox, put out The Simpsons, is it going to look good? It might look good on 92 devices, but it won't look good on 8 because of the way it's rendered, the way it looks. So the consumer has, how do you manage that in an ever-changing? Where the iPod, I guess you could say, okay, we can pretty much fit it in there. But the real, reach and distribution that entertainment companies would look for is in the mobile area. And how do you end up, not only, I mean, rights management, starting even at the basic right, does it look good on the device? And it's an interesting question.
Well, I think the consumer electronics providers or the business models have a real quandary, right? They're being held by the content owners to protect their content. To come up with a system that protects their content in a strong manner, then you're only as strong as your weakest link. If you open up the standards and you have multiple companies getting access to that same content, you can't guarantee the security of that content any longer, okay? So from their perspective in trying to meet the letter of the intent, a closed system is more secure than an open system.
But it hurts.
I don't agree
But
with
that's
that
the
at all.
quandary, right? It hurts the consumer.
I don't think it is a quandary. I don't think it's correct. The premise is false. I do content protection for Fox. We do not have a policy to favor closed systems. It all depends on what the standard says and how it's enforced. To be perfectly honest, we have no problem with how Microsoft enforced the content protection aspects of Place for Sure devices. Place for Sure has technical issues associated with Microsoft software. Surprise. But it is not inherently less secure just because more companies make use of it. It's all about following the standard and having the standard be a secure one. We're participating in every standards body on Earth, and our goal is simply to make that standard, whether it's OMA 2.0, 1.0, Coral, you name it, as secure as possible. If it is, we actually prefer that to the silo approach. Jobs talks about how secure. It's as secure as he feels like making it. And it doesn't have any analog copy protection on the outputs. He hasn't committed to protecting digital outputs. It's actually not that secure, to be perfectly honest.
And Ron, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying the studios are telling the manufacturers to do something in a proprietary manner. I'm just saying for the manufacturers, it's easier for them to meet the intent by coming up with something that's proprietary. And anytime you expand...
If you can get a license from Apple. If you can get a license to be one of the lucky manufacturers.
Zune is proprietary,
right.
And it's a closed system.
Yep. Again,
right?
But there's nothing superior in security from Zune. That's actually a better example. Zune and Place for Sure are side-by-side products from Microsoft. There is no security difference between them from our perspective. And now we have a new silo to deal with, which has all kinds of market problems and usability problems and interoperability problems associated with it. So we would have been very happy if they'd never.
But isn't part of the problem that the labels and other people have left it up to technology companies to define how they're going to implement it? I've been in the technology business for 30 years, and we've never got along in the technology business. Even when we come up with a standard, we can't implement it the same way. Never. Even I'll go back to operating systems like Unix. How many Unixes were there that never even worked together? How many? It's an environment where the content producers have to. You've got two choices really. One, own the DRM and the technology and enforce it so that everybody is using it, or get rid of it altogether.
I think that's a false choice.
I think, I mean, you have Apple and Microsoft, and you have vertical silos. And what they solved was, you know, when Apple did it, I think they solved a very basic problem. It's a chicken and egg problem. All consumer electronics companies have. DVD was one of the most successful product launches in history. The copy protection wasn't so good, but it was highly successful, had limited protection, and everyone could agree on it. This was a new product offer. The iPod in the MP3 player market was a brand new segment, and the content wasn't there, and the protections weren't there for it. Someone created that. A consumer electronics company like typically, I don't know, Panasonic or Hitachi or you name it, Samsung, they don't have content offers typically. They don't sell content usually with their devices. They rely on other people, and those people who do sell the content usually rely on the device manufacturer to define exactly what they want as to the protections or what they can offer. So it's always a chicken and egg, and Apple did a good job of bringing these two things together as a starting point. But is it the end point? Absolutely not. I mean, there has never been in history of consumer electronics a non-standardized solution that's worked between different products. There's never been one, and DRM requires that. So I don't see this as any other different than any other protocol, anything else that's used in any other consumer electronics device. It's inevitable that it'll be standardized.
So let's talk about something that Ron brought up, and I know it's on everybody's mind, is whether DRM is a future. And we almost Steve Jobs wrote a letter that got a lot of attention, and regardless of the hypocrisies in that letter, the general issue is clearly in lots of different ways. People are, I think, DRM in music. There's a huge push now to say, does this make sense anymore? Especially because there's DRM doesn't, they tried a few times, but DRM doesn't work on albums, and you can upload it from an album. So why punish people who are paying to download it online when the same rules don't apply to people who buy an album? And we all know you can get every track that you want via any BitTorrent or any peer-to-peer network. So is that the future? And if it is, why would the same logic not apply to movies and TV shows? Because if you care to find it and have the energy and knowledge, you can find pretty much any TV show or movie to download illegally or on the street corner. So are you just punishing people who play by the rules by making it difficult to transfer between devices and do what they want with their download?
Well, I think it's, you talk on the social fabrics of the times, and I don't think you can let the genie, or you can put the genie back in the bottle. I think to some degree that people do feel they own content. It's a question of how far we in the industry as protectors or those that deploy DRM ultimately have to find some standards that fit the consumer social fabric, if you will, and at the same time keep it simple. So there are some DRM standards that needs to be there. It does need to get standardized, but I think that to a certain degree you can't change the mindset of those growing up that want to see content. They'll just see it on different platforms in different ways, and businesses have to understand to fit the consumer consciousness in order to monetize their content.
And I think one of the other things too is, like, I wouldn't necessarily compare music to video or movies or TV shows. Because I mean, I may listen to my favorite song 10 times in a row, but I'm watching the same episode of Lost 10 times in a row. And
I've watched the same episode of The Simpsons 25 times, so I can tell you.
That's because it's a Fox show. Sticky.
But the point is, in some of the systems that we've created, the consumer can actually download it for 24 hours, 3 days, or in their mind, purchase it. And there's a difference there. I mean, I think there's if they download it for a day because they want to watch it on a Friday night, a new movie came out, that's great. Then it disappears. It goes away. Way of getting rid of that. Or they want it for 3 days. And then if they want it permanently, like they say, no, I want that in my collection. And we haven't even talked yet about storing all this stuff and making and moving it around, which I think is the next big issue that'll come up here. But I think it's a little bit different than music. I don't know if anybody would download, well, they might for a party or something, but for the most part, you download music, you want to hold on to it. Whereas if you're watching an episode of Lost, you might just want to see that episode on your mobile device, traveling and you missed it, and you want to be able to download it, watch it 24 hours, and see it, once you watch it, it's done, it's over and gone.
I'd like to actually, I'm delighted to report that we don't own a record company. Thank God, that's why our stock price is up 50% in the last year. But if you think about CDs and DVD, just to take those two paradigms, the previous form, CD is kind of the first real digital distribution. There's, of course, VHS tapes before that and reel-to-reel before that. Even, just to keep it simple, think about a book. Books are still around. Newspapers are still around. Actually, I'm going to get to that in a minute, too. The point is there is this legacy media where people actually were happy with just owning a book. I mean, yes, Xerox machines, I guess, were invented in the 50s and got easier to use over time. But you didn't have large numbers of people thinking they're going to go home or go to their office and make a backup copy of the book they just bought at the local bookstore. They were fine with just the one copy. That was then. And actually, I think most people are still fine with just the one copy of a book. Now, what we now have is a digital world where the product itself is different. It sits on my computer or in my portable device or on my set-top box or on my TV set. And the idea of we absolutely have to be responsive to what consumers want to do with the particular product in front of them, but that doesn't mean that we can't meter the experience for where they're watching it, how long they want to watch it, whether they want to keep it or not. I mean, one of the downsides people never focus on about basically removing DRM is we as content owners have to treat every transaction as a permanent transfer, and then let's try to keep the number of copies to a minimum. So guess what happens to the pricing model? It goes through the roof. Consumers aren't going to like that. There are consequences to having ownership of everything as being the only business model. It's essentially a dumb of the existing business model in movies, for example, which got 25 different variations. There's theaters, there's airplanes, there's DVD and VHS, there's television in all kinds of flavors, paid television, unpaid television. How long do you want to wait to watch it, and so forth. It would be a shame. DRM is actually nothing more than a technological enforcement of those different viewing options. That's all it is from a business model perspective. Then there's a security overlay to say, yeah, and we want you to stick with what you paid for. I think that's very good for consumers, and I think it would be a terrible thing for consumers if you rip DRM away and say, well, have at it, and please, please try to keep us in business.
To play devil's advocate, I don't think anybody would disagree that if you're paying $3.99 to rent it for a day, you could put DRM on it to control that, right? Nobody would disagree with that. But if you're purchasing it and you own it, then the argument would be, and I think there's some merit to it, that you're essentially punishing, I think, or treating like a criminal the person for it when they are choosing to do that. We all know they're choosing to do it because they could pirate it. It's not very hard to pirate things anymore. So why give in some ways the person who chooses to pay an inferior product instead of saying, look, if you choose to buy it, we're going to give you the highest quality version possible, and we're going to assume that's enough for your money.
But even when they choose to pay, they're not buying unlimited rights. They're not buying the right to make copies. I agree that DRM has to deliver the promise of what I paid when I get a sell-through copy of my DVD or a Blu-ray disc or a download, which is not a purchase but a perpetual license. I should get the full panoply of rights to which I think I got it. They should be clearly disclosed to me. I should be able to play it on the devices that play back the DRM, and I should be told which ones those are and which ones they aren't. All that's great. And I think DRM absolutely delivers on that promise. What I shouldn't be able to do, I see no reason to offer to the consumer, is, oh, I don't like the restrictions. Yeah, that's what I paid for, that's what I clicked I accept on, but I actually decide I don't like those, and it's terrible that I can't just avoid them. Where's the justice in that?
I'll let somebody else go.
Well, and I just want to say again something to consider, to your point, Ben, is that there is a difference between the transaction and what you do in your home. And what you need to be able to do is make the consumer accountable for their actions with the content. And so if there's a way to come up with a less intrusive mechanism that gives them the portability of the content in their home, but make them accountable if they misuse that content, then maybe there's a middle ground that allows the consumer to have the flexibility and the convenience, and the content owners to make their money and to sell their products in the way.
products.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I think being able to, fingerprinting technology is going to help from that perspective. I think the biggest issue though is if we go back and look at piracy today, what's happening. We just conducted a usability study on our product, and it's not a big survey, but about 50 people went through it. And at the very end, we asked people, how do they share music today? And we have 3 different age groups. The age groups go from 13 to 19, or 13 to 21, 21 to 31, and then 31 and above. And the 2 lower groups share music by copying CDs, giving the CDs to their friends, so you just go here, rip it onto your computer as you like, and by instant messaging is the largest way things get moved back and forth. The only way, I mean, DRM will stop some of that, and it will people not to buy music, which is what they're doing right now. They're actually voting with their pocketbook today. But fingerprinting technology will allow us to understand where that music is flowing, and that's not done today. So I think the other issue I think that's critical in this whole area is that because it's so easy to get music for free, and you can pull it down from the internet to wherever you are, by eliminating DRM and using a fingerprint approach, or by just eliminating DRM and coming up and letting music, selling music for a nickel a track, not 99 cents a track, it might be a way where kids actually feel as if they want to buy it, and there is a value, and understand that there's a value to that music, or 20 cents a track, 10 cents a track, whatever it happens to be.
Sorry. No.
So, I didn't
Sorry,
hear.
we'll do questions in a minute.
Yeah, we give it away free. It's free.
Yeah, let's let Ron go in again.
Just to respond, we're actually very interested in both fingerprinting technology and forensic watermarking technology, but they're not. We don't look at them as substitutes for DRM. They're complementary. They're exactly for when DRMs are breached. So for us, DRMs are the basic business model execution where hopefully 90+% of consumers are happy with the restrictions and don't seek to breach them. The remaining 10%, or some percentage of that, are with them and seek to breach them. And yes, forensic marking is great for that, and when fingerprinting is great to actually track the content itself. But it's all part of a system of basically keeping honest people honest. People who actually do follow the rules should be aware that people who don't follow the rules aren't getting off scot-free. You have the chump problem where people, if everything is free for the taking, why should anybody pay? They're stupid. And
well,
that's
why
not
does
a
anybody?
I'd like to think because they feel they're supposed to pay.
And people pay for quality.
But why make them into fools by saying, well, people who don't pay, nothing happens to them?
Well, let's ask the question then, because clearly people buy stuff on iTunes and Napster and Rhapsody when they could download it very easily, and the reason is not, and there's other reasons obviously. But so why don't you weigh in?
I mean, people buy because it's convenient, because they guarantee quality. But I mean, I'm about 2 things about this whole discussion. A, we concentrate on music all the time, and music is by far the smallest market for content, I would say, and it's decreasing in value, I would say, right now. Not that that's necessarily because of piracy, but the point is that it's not the biggest market by far. The second thing is that there is a very strong market that's increasing, and it's much larger than iTunes in anything on the PC, and that's mobile. And mobile music is all DRM. No one seems to have massive complaints about it. And in the largest markets where you have the most music penetration on handphones, Korea, Japan, 40% penetration on 3G handsets for subscription services and download services. People pay, they're very happy with it. It happens all the time. They don't complain. When they change a handset, they get the rights on the new handset. They can't transfer the songs, but they're happy with it. And I think that's a very normal model. And they pay because it's convenient, and they kind of have to too. But they pay because they want to hear the music on their phone, and they see value in it.
And you said they can switch handsets, so they must feel like they're getting the value for the money and not being screwed by the technology.
Well, because the network is taking care of that. I mean, they get value from the network, and there's a stickiness
They can't
aspect.
switch with providers, though, I don't think.
Yeah, there's a stickiness to the provider side.
Yeah, it's
But-
like iTunes. So
Yeah, but at least switch your phone, and like you can still maintain your music catalog essentially, and you can upload MP3s and stuff like that.
I assume there's got to be concern and a balance about, fighting piracy and putting certain rights on it, and not wanting to. I mean, there's obviously we've all known people or gone through the experience ourselves of downloading something, buying something, and not having it work with something, or not being, buying a new computer and trying to get the old stuff on the old one to the new one, et cetera, and that can piss some consumers off, and sometimes they're not going to blame the right person, right? They're going to blame the person who made this software.
Well, who do you blame?
Who do you blame? That's an excellent question. If it's a Fox movie downloaded from MovieLink with Windows Media DRM and it's an HP PC and my Comcast is my ISP, whose fault is it?
And we actually deal with that.
It's not ours.
Oh, okay. That's Hollywood, folks.
The joint venture that we're doing right now is between a company called Jamba, or they would say Yamba, and Yamba is probably the largest mobile content provider in the world. And basically what happens is they're constantly trying to keep up as people are moving their phones and their devices, making sure that the content is able to work. That's kind of my earlier example, was as these more and more devices are added, and literally, like I said, it's 4 a day. And so the consumer upgrades, you got to make sure that the content they download works on the upgraded phone. And usually, for the most part it does, because it's an upgraded phone, it's a better phone. If they have a complaint, they'll either go to the carrier or they'll go to Yamba directly. Typically they'll go to the carrier, who just routes them right back into us and says, here's the problem, and it's our job to fix it, or the carrier takes it off their bill. So there's a really good quality control there. Because the billing is, off the master carrier billing. It is a little bit tricky to get onto carriers. There's an art to actually getting connected into carriers. There's tons of rules around that, but once you get those rules established and you're in the carrier, it's a very good controlled environment.
So let's take a few audience questions.
Okay. I understand that you have to leave, Ben, is that correct? Probably at 12:30, so I can turn over the questions to panelists.
So, why don't you moderate the questions? That'd be great.
Okay. Who first? All right.
Go save your newspaper.
Yes, I will go see Print Journal.
My name is Vicki Makalatayad with Lily Mac Publishing. You guys, I think I figured this out. We need the dog whisperer. We need to rehabilitate majors and train people. We've got, I'm starting to wonder what's happening with the mentality of the United States in particular. I have kids who feel punished every day too, because they have to go to work, and get a job. People want stuff for free. We've got to do something that makes people understand that there is a cost for stuff. We need to decide what that is. But the thing is, you're saying consumers, our kids don't want to pay anything for any of this. And that's what we don't want to look at. They don't feel they should pay for anything. My kid wants to be Beyonce. She wants to be a star. She wants to drive around in private jets. There is a mentality here that's saying, we don't want to pay. I do gospel music. I've got people who want to take my doggone songs and pervert them and say anything they want to say on them. Why shouldn't we let them do it?
Commentary by the panelists. I know this is tough.
Clearly there's a perception that if you can get something, if your friends are getting something for free, it's back to the chump factor I mentioned before, there's actually a little bit of a peer pressure, I think. Like, what are you doing paying for it when it's available for free? And we have to get away from that. We have to attach some stigma to stealing things. That's what it is, it's theft. We have to attach some stigma to that.
And those same kids don't go into stores and shoplift.
Right.
I mean, they pay for stuff in the stores. So it is an education process. Unfortunately, the internet provides a level of anonymity, and behavior on the internet is different than behavior in the physical brick and mortar world. And it's going to take education, and it's going to take, some examples, but we have to
also monitoring. It needs to be. We need to recreate the world of a store with security devices and locks on the door and so forth.
consequences.
Exactly.
Right?
Okay.
On the perception of risk.
Excuse me, Ron Webb with Samsung, and I understand that the kids don't want to pay and they want something for free, and I understand that very well, but adults who do want to pay are starting to be sympathetic with the kids. And the reason is that, personally I've been screwed so many times by DRM that even though I still want to pay, and I will go out of my I'm starting to become sympathetic with the kids because it's gotten so complicated, and it's gotten to be where you pay and you pay and you pay and you pay. So if this is not straightened out and simplified somehow, what you're going to have is a Pretty Boy Floyd syndrome where everybody's, rooting for the outlaw and not for the good guys.
Any comments from the panel?
Well, we clearly can do a better job of making DRM more palatable. It does, as several people said on the panel, it's certainly not intended to piss people off for obvious reasons. We're in business. We're in business to please our customers. Now, it's easier said than done to make something seamless and trouble-free and anything in software. I mean, leave DRM aside, how many people have never had any trouble with PC software? Okay? So to a certain extent, some of this is just the nature of the technology change. And we have to do better on a go-forward basis. I think the good news is, as in other forms of technology, whether it's the Microsoft operating system, as buggy as it is, it's clearly better than it used to be. And DRMs are clearly better, more user-friendly than they used to be. And the solution is not to abandon something that's buggy, but to fix it. So let's fix it.
And I would also add on that it is working. I mean, the stuff we're doing in the is extremely popular, and it's really good to work with. The B-Sky-B stuff, it's actually very interesting. We limited it to just UK residents, I believe, and BBC's been doing well with it. Channel 4 has. I mean, I think sometimes we take an aspect of what's going on in the States and say, we're the leaders in this, and we know what's going on, and these are the issues we face. I think I would tell everybody in the room, take a look around the globe and see what's going on in the UK. It's pretty amazing, and it's a very good experience. We're doing in India, skipping right to the mobile device, not even talking about PC. See how advanced, how Asia basically yawned when we introduced the iPhone. They're like, oh yeah, that's great, I had that 4 years ago. Exactly. So I think one of the challenges is just take a look outside the States, because there's a lot of really interesting, good applications and platforms out there.
But I think until there is full interoperability among different DRM solutions, people are going to vote with their pocketbook, which is what they're doing right now. They are not necessarily downloading as much as they can, and they are looking at free approaches. And they're still buying CDs, not as much. I refuse to buy off of iTunes. I'll buy one, and then I'll go buy the CD and rip it into my computer. It's much easier. I can take it and run it on my stereo systems. I can run it on multiple different computers. I can't do that if I buy it off of iTunes.
Well, you can burn it onto a CD.
Well, then you have to burn it on. I mean, there is a way. I know.
You can recreate your CD experience.
All right, unfortunately, we know this is a very hot topic. We're going to end this session. Let's give a big hand to our presenters here. Thank you. We're going to, thank you very much. We're going to go right into our next session on search. If you wish to talk to the speakers, please do so outside. We're on a very tight schedule because we try to get a lot of sessions in today. We'll be doing search, and then when search is over around 1:15, we'll have lunch, and then 2 more sessions.